Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? How are you guys feeling? Y'all, I think a real conversation needs to be had about what Kanye West has talked about because I feel like that's a real conversation that needs to be had, okay? First of all, Kanye has talked about his cousin and he speaks about how, he and his cousin, he introduced his cousin into watching, well, not necessarily watching, viewing, I would say, right? Reading inappropriate magazines. And in the past, he has, said that, oh, I have had an addiction. I've had a dirty magazine addiction. And he says that, my cousin actually he's in jail, and he feels bad. He's, I think, disclosing that he's always felt bad about this because he feels as though like he, introduced him to dirty magazines. I introduced my cousin to dirty magazines. And now I think in the back of my mind, after I had been introducing him to that, and I remember I and him, we both was doing the head thing, y'all know, follow me, head, from the time we were 6 to 14. I feel as though that I introduced him to some things, and this is why he ended up later on being as messed up as he ended up being. So that was the conversation that he was struggling with. So he created the song basically saying, I gave my cousin head up until I was 14. And this is something that has messed with him mentally because his cousin, committed the M word with a person that was carrying a child, so he thinks in his head, like, man, does this have something to do with me? Am I, the reason behind it? He has some, second guesses and feelings pertaining to that, right? And he struggled with that. And something else that I thought about is when y'all remember when Amber Rose said that she used to play with Kanye West's booty back in the day, like, and even I believe it was Chris Brown came out and was talking about how, there was a rant or whatever that Kanye did, and Kanye was screaming at the club or whatnot. And he was like, how Kanye, yelled at the top of his lungs, ain't nobody putting their finger in my booty. And I was like, oh my God. And now it came out that, Kanye had relations or was in a relationship, not even a relationship, they were messing around, Jeffree Star. Jeffree Star, there was a woman that was stating different things, and that was something that was stated. And back then, Kanye and the Jeffree Star and all of that, people believed it to be fake because the woman since came out said it wasn't true, but Jeffree Star is saying, yep, all of it is true. And she, like him, because I say she, because I think Jeffree Star identifies as a trans woman. She came out and she was like saying how, that entire situation, at the time, like, F it. And yep, it's true. When she first came out and, it was said or stated, she would always come on live and say, Wyoming. And, I just making different noises, letting people know that she and Kanye was in the same area. So now she's coming out and saying, F it is true because Kanye is, speaking about his trauma. I just think that that's a nasty time to admit it because I actually felt sorry for Kanye for admitting, not even for admitting, for even, admitting to having trauma, to saying this is something that he struggled with, because now he's thinking in his head like, man, I introduced my cousin to this, am I the reason why he's in jail? Do I have anything to do with that? Every time he has talked about his cousin in the past, remember this? I really want to get into that and really talk about that. We're going to speak.
Love. And you can't explain love. My cousin is locked up for murder, and I love him. And so he did a bad thing, but I still love him.
And I think he, even in him saying that was an old clip of when he said this, right? I'm not showing no clips, no visual, but there's an old clip of him saying this, and it makes me really think like, okay, even then when he was like, I still love him, what kind of love? Because he was saying it in a very nervousing type of way, as though he was hiding something, so that made me feel some type of way. And he's admitted that he's had an addiction to magazines, for a while now, has been stating that this is something he struggles with,
Pornography addiction. Playboy was my gateway into full-on pornography addiction. My dad had a Playboy left out at age 5. And it's affected almost every choice I made for the rest of my life, from age 5 to now having to kick the habit. And it just presents itself in the open, like it's okay. And I stand up and say, it's not okay.
And this is something that was just absolutely insane, and people are now speaking up about Kim Kardashian, and they're saying, Kim Kardashian, try to get him some help, her and her mother and her family try to get him some help, and he, got online and exposed them and such things of that nature, Boosie came out. Boosie said, damn, Kanye, I feel bad for this dude. This dude been through some ish, bruh. He says, the rants make sense now. This man was sucking D as a child, shaking my head. His mind is effed up. I hate him having to go through this as a child. This man coming for any and anyone with the rapture, whoever wronged him, and they in trouble, So he's speaking about that. He's saying that Kanye is, at this moment, he's lost, he is lost, and he's at a very dark place because, he's dealing with some demons, which I believe it to be true. He is dealing with some demons. And this is honestly, although it's like a weird thing to talk about, he has already talked about his porn addiction, and him introducing his cousin to that. I honestly think about that. And I think about like two things. One, introducing your cousins to something weird. I talk about this in my blog, right? Y'all, need to definitely check me out on TikTok and other platforms. But I talk about this in my blog, and I haven't premiered it or, showed it yet or made it public yet. But I'm definitely going to do that because of this Kanye situation. I feel like it's an important conversation. I speak about how when we were younger, we used to just play on the chat lines when we was kids, and how I introduced my cousin to that. And, in the past, like, she has been catfishing people, and just different things has happened with her that makes me feel like, man, she's messed up because of it. But I think back on, man, as a kid, we all was, and doing the chat lines, I showed her it because she had low self-esteem, and I felt like, there were people there that could make her feel beautiful and all of that, because she was a big girl. But we were kids at that time, so I introduced something destructive to my cousin, and that could have had, impact on her. So I think about that. And then I think about, when I was younger, my older cousin, and I speak about this on my other channel, how, she gave me oral, and I was very disturbed about that, and I think about like, hey, is this, did this have effects on me moving down the line? It has this affected me moving down the line? So kids really do introduce kids to other things, to inappropriate things and things that because people doing different stuff in a household, people doing different stuff, and you hanging out with Lil Susie, and Lil Susie mama and daddy be doing it, and she be in the other room, and she be watching her parents getting busy and whatever little Susie might be into and has interest in, and now you are Lil Susie friend, so Lil Susie want to share with you what she getting exposed to. You just don't never really know what the situation is. Kids introduce each other to a lot of freaky stuff, a lot of inappropriate conversations, a lot of sexual innuendos, and kids are very like that, so you just don't ever know what a child is introducing your child to or whatever. You have to really get to know the kids that your kids are hanging with. Like, that's why I don't just let my daughter befriend or hang out with people that I just don't know. You know what I'm saying? I need to know what's up. Like, if I don't know this child and I don't know this child's family, I don't want my child hanging out with them. And people be like, oh, you're this and you're that, and I'm stuck up and I'm this and I'm that. And my child can feel however it is she want to feel about it. Later on, when she grow up, she'll, understand. But I don't want my baby, my daughter, hanging out with nobody that I don't know. If I don't know you, I'm sorry. I don't want that. I don't want you guys hanging out. I don't want you guys getting connected. I don't want none of that. I have to truly know who you are and where you come from and who your parents are, who your family is, before I'm comfortable with my child being around. Like, I'm sorry. It's a real thing. Kids do expose other kids to sexual things, and then you're stuck on that, and then your development is paused, and then this affects you in a very negative manner. You just don't know. So I think it's a real conversation that needs to be had. I'm handling, or just the handling of this entire situation, I think it's a real thing to discuss. And you guys got to let me know what you think about it. You know what I'm saying? Let me know how you guys feel about this. Let me know if I'm tripping. Let me know if y'all understand what I'm saying with this. Do you think that, or do you have a story of something like, personal like this happening to you? I think it's a common thing. I just think that, because it's Kanye, people are like, looking at him sideways. But it's definitely a common thing, and it's a common conversation to have, in my humble opinion. But y'all let me know what y'all think about all of this. And I love you guys to pieces. And bye-bye.